Hello and welcome into another reality check episode here on the channel presented by Prize Picks. I am Matt O'Leary. I am joined as always by my good friend, Jeremy, aka Jets Chaos. Jeremy, how goes it, my friend? How we doing?
It goes, and it keeps on going.
Okay. I love that. So I haven't spoken to you since the schedule came out. We were doing schedule rumors last week, and I'm sure, we're not going to spend the whole show on this because we've done a lot of this conversation, even though we haven't necessarily addressed it here on this show. But I wanted to start with what you make of the schedule and where you at prediction wise after the schedule came out.
Kind of proud of myself for nailing the Tennessee game because I kind of was saying that like it was an already done deal, and then it turned out that I didn't get burned by it because for me it felt so obvious they were going to put us against Robert Saleh week 1. It seemed like such an obvious thing. Look, I think the schedule was fine. I mean, I see a path to 2-2, which I like. And it's a lot of people say, there's people like being very, very negative, saying, why are you assuming Tennessee is a win? And my answer to that is I'm not assuming Tennessee is a win. I'm assuming it's a winnable game if we're going to win any games. Like if you say the Jets are going to win 4 to 5 games, let's say you're on the downside of that, you're saying the Jets are going to win 4 to 5 games. Which games do you think we have a chance to win? You're going to say Tennessee. You're going to say the Miami games. If we're going to be even if they're right and we should be negative and we're going to be 5-12 and you believe that's the truth, you still have to find those 5 wins somewhere.
No, exactly. And I was surprised because I said something similar. Like I had, just for full transparency, I predicted 6-11. I think they're a 6 or 7 win team going into the season. And I hope they prove me wrong. I hope they win a lot more games than just 6 or 7. But one of those 6 wins that I had was against Tennessee. And I was shocked how many Titans fans I had in my comments going at me like, LOL, you think the Jets are so much better than the Titans. I'm like, I don't know how to tell you this. Like, these are 2 not very good teams that are in the same boat. I'm like, this is a coin flip game. I just so happen I think this is where the Jets are getting one of their 6 wins. I'm not predicting the Jets to win 12 games this year or anything like that.
I mean, it's so we could sit here and say we're going to win 2 to 3 games, next year and everything. But I don't know, man. It just like how does any bad team win 5 games and not 2 to 3? I mean, like, I don't know the answer to that. I mean, the answer is that you draft players and they get better. Like, you get better players. The answer is maybe we're not going to roll out Brady Cook for 6 weeks in a row with the Clark brothers playing defense. Maybe we'll stay healthy and we'll actually have our starters playing every day. Maybe Geno Smith will be better than a completely dysfunctional Justin Fields and then a Brady Cook. And it doesn't mean Geno Smith is going to be a superstar, but maybe he'll be functional because our quarterback play was not functional last year. So to sit here and have to argue how we're going to get to 5 wins is a little crazy because 5 wins is not good. 5-12 is not good. And people are now going to sit there and say, well, how do you even get to 5 wins? Well, what do you mean? How do I get to 5 wins? Why not just find another team to root for if you can't even sit there and believe that you can root for and be optimistic or hopeful even that your team could win 5 games in a season?
Yeah, and look, it's definitely a tough start, right? You have Tennessee and then the 3 NFC North games. I think for me, like breaking the schedule down into quadrants, like if you're 2-2 through the first 4, or 4-4 through the first 8, it feels like you're giving yourself a chance at a season. And that's really all I think we could ask for going into it.
Yeah. I mean, how many times have we seen teams go from, I mean, not tons of times, but there's been examples of teams that are really bad. And then they have this breakout year and it doesn't go the way it's supposed to. It's not, they get to 6 wins and then they get to 9 wins and then they're a playoff team. Sometimes we see a team go 2-14 back in the day when there were 16 games. And then boom, the next year they're 10-6 in the playoffs. It's happened. Am I saying it's going to definitely happen? No. My point is every year is a different year. We've added a bunch of players. We have a completely different quarterback, a completely different offensive coordinator. Everything would have to go perfect for us to win 7 games, 6-7 games. Like everything. Things would have to go really, really well. I am not in denial of that. A lot of things would have to happen in a positive way. Like all of our draft picks are hitting, all of our, you know what I mean? Not a lot of injuries. Like a lot of things will have to go right. But as fans, isn't that our job to hope and root for those things to go right?
No, absolutely. Hennessy Heisman's hanging out with us, and he says Green Bean versus Reality Island, which that's where it seems like it is right now. And look, as I guess I'm on Reality Island with them winning 6 games, but man, I want Green Bean to be right. And I love that he is carrying the flag and being, confident that this is the year, expectations are low. The Jets aren't going to do this when all the expectations are high. It's going to be when we least expect it. Man, I hope he is right by that. And I hope there is a path to a 9 or a 10 win season. The Jets fighting for a wild card spot.
That would be great.
Absolutely. So the main crux of this episode that we really wanted to get into was expectations and hopes, even if you want to go on the more optimistic side. And we're going to go position by position. We'll talk about the key guys on the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball and kind of just take it from there. So I feel like hard not to start with the quarterback room. As you mentioned, for Geno is going to be the starter. I'll toss to you first. What are your expectations out of Geno Smith coming back to the New York Jets to start?
Well, I don't expect him to be as good as his best years in Seattle. Not that he was a superstar, by the way. He wasn't. He was just better than anybody thought he was going to be, and enough to get a real contract. But what I'm hoping for is obviously better than he was for the Raiders. And realistically knowing he's not going to be as good as he was on the Seahawks when he was at his best, but somewhere in between that. But most importantly, functional, right? And I think the reason I could believe that can happen is because if you look at the situation on the Raiders last year, he's, it's very believable, aside from just the simple fact a player could have a bounce back year from a bad year. If you look at the team he played for and the Raiders and how bad their offensive line was and how they didn't have really wide receivers and Bowers got hurt. I mean, if you actually watch the Raider games and look at it and understand it, then, there wasn't much opportunity for Geno Smith to be very good.
No. And I just pulled up the numbers to give us some more, context to the combo. 15 games played. He went 2-13 as a starter, completed 67.4% of his passes, just over 3,000 yards, 3,025. So 201 yards a game, 19 touchdowns, 17 interceptions. I've noticed with him the last 2 years, his interception numbers has been pretty high. 17 last year, 15 the year prior. I don't think it's fair to expect Geno to play, like he did in 2022 with Seattle when, he went for 30 touchdowns that year and, almost 70% completion percentage and over 4,000 yards. But I feel like somewhere in between what last year was and that high end number, maybe you're looking at like 3,800 yards and 24 touchdowns and 12 picks and, completion percentage around 65 to 68. Which, as you pointed to earlier, would be a significant upgrade over what they got. Not saying like, oh my God, you're building the whole team's future around Geno Smith, but it kind of lets you see what the rest of this offense and coaching staff could look like with that kind of a performance.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we want to functional, more than believing we're going to make the playoffs, more importantly than that. Like, that's a whole different thing. Like, if we were to somehow make a playoff run, how amazing that would be. All that's great, fine, and dandy. But really importantly, is that we have enough competency at the quarterback so we could see what we have. I don't want a year where we don't know who Omar Cooper is. We don't know who Sadiq is because we don't have a quarterback. And there's like, he's so bad that you can't even judge your players. Like last year, we're all trying to look at like, people are judging Mason Taylor. How could you judge Mason Taylor? When you look at Brady Cook and Justin Fields and what we had at quarterback, how do you know what the potential was or what he could do as a football player? There's just no way to judge these guys, right? There's no way to evaluate them. But if you have a competent quarterback play, at least you could see what you have and get a little bit of understanding what the identity of this team is, what you could expect from this team moving forward if we draft and find the right quarterback. But, if you have a quarterback that's completely inept and incompetent, you get no information.
No, it's very hard to tell, like you were saying at that point. I want to go to the super chat from Nipley Frost, who says, I was born on Green Bean Island. This should be enough for some oars so you can paddle on your skiff. Love your content. Glad I could catch it live. Nipley, thank you so much for supporting. We really appreciate it. And I want to get there so badly. I think with how poorly things have gone for this team, with the hype around the Aaron Rodgers era and how they went 7-10 and 5-12. And I bought into the Jets being more competitive last year. I thought they'd win like 7 games last year. And clearly they were abysmal and they won 3. I have a hard time getting my expectations that high. So I'm going more on the conservative side personally. But I want you guys to be right.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it would be amazing to be right. It would be like, a joyride type season. It's not something that you could really predict, right? Like when the few times it happens for teams where they go from worst to first or, have a complete turnaround. But we watched it happen for New England in a sense just last year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's a great call out. I did want to pull up one more comment in here before I did want to talk about the rest of the quarterback room as well with our thoughts on Geno. J Boy is saying AG is the one who picked Justin Fields, so his play is on AG. Why does Aaron Glenn get the credit for Justin Fields and not Darren Muji? And then all the moves that people like, Darren Muji gets the credit for it, and then Aaron Glenn doesn't get any credit for it. I'm not like, I have major questions about Aaron Glenn going into this year. I'm not saying like he's proven that he's a great coach. He's at best still unproven. I just don't get why this is the case for so many.
I think if you're being honest, and I think a lot of us knew that Justin Fields was not going to be a very good starting quarterback in this league. Like we had already seen the reality and accepted the reality, but let's not pretend anybody predicted it was going to be that bad. Like if you want to play that game and pretend, sure, live on your own islands of imagination, right? Like I wasn't excited about Justin Fields. I didn't believe in him as a quarterback. I never did really. And I was never a huge fan of his. And, but to think or believe he was going to be that bad, to play so much worse than as much as I didn't believe he was really that good of a quarterback. And it was, he certainly never played as bad. Like he was better on Pittsburgh and he was better even in Chicago. He was never as brutally bad as he was for us. So there was no real way to see that coming. Do I like the judgment of those of Moogs or Aaron Glenn in bringing him in? I don't love that judgment. I think I didn't agree with it. I thought, what are they talking about? Is it just coach talk when they were saying they believe he could be a real guy? But I also at the same time realized that he was a bridge quarterback, and I believe that deep down they knew that he wasn't going to be the long-term solution. But I do think they were hoping he could be better than he was. And I don't think anybody saw him being as bad as he was.
No, I certainly didn't. I mean, there were, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 games of the 9 that he started where he had less than 100 passing yards. Like that's unheard of for modern NFL.
Yeah, I mean, look, I never saw him so bad that he would sit there holding a football with a wide open tight end running across the field right in front of him. Like something happened to him psychologically. He just fell apart. And got so much worse than I already knew he wasn't a good quarterback, but I didn't, but that had nothing to do with being that bad. He was at a level of bad that went beyond, I think, anything anybody could have predicted.
Yeah. And like Gare Bear saying here, once he got the concussion in game 2, it was all over. It did feel like that was a turning point of the season.
Maybe that was it. Maybe that was it. Who knows?
Now, for the rest of the Jets quarterback room this year, obviously a lot of talk is going to be around rookie quarterback Cade Klubnik. Do you think he ends up being QB2? And do you think he starts any games for the Jets this season?
Man, I hope not. I hope not. If you told me now that Klubnik was going to start a lot of games for the Jets, I would say that probably, puts the stamp on the fact that it's going to be a very bad season. But if I don't know, man. I think there's a chance they're going to wait for someone to shake loose now at this point. Like after, at some point there's going to be cuts and some veterans going to get cut because some team is going to find some young quarterback that does better in camp. so good in camp that they're going to say, let's give this kid a shot and move forward. And, we'll end up bringing in a veteran quarterback. I'm not going to lie, though. There's a part of me that always, like any Jets fan, we love any quarterback we've never seen play for our team before, right? Would there be some excitement at all in seeing Klubnik play in the regular season with that little dream, that little hope of that little spark that, man, can you imagine if he came in and was good? Not that I believe you were predicting he would be, but that imagine what that would mean for our organization if we struck gold like that. If we just like hit the lottery and this 4th round pick comes in and starts flashing and playing really well. I mean, it would be an amazing thing. I think that we're going to end up picking some quarterback up because I don't think, imagine we were 3-3 by some miracle and Geno got hurt. Now you're going to go to Klubnik at 3-3. If you're Aaron Glenn, that's what you're going to put your season on. Like, it just doesn't, it feels to me like they have to get a quarterback.
Yeah. And look, I think there two things can be true. Like, I am looking forward to seeing what Cade does in training camp in the preseason. I think that would be a good litmus test to see how far along he is, as a quarterback prospect. But as a day 3 rookie, I almost feel like it'd be doing a disservice for him to start a bunch of games unless it's, and I hope this isn't the case, but if the Jets are 3-10 and in their last 4 games, they're like, yeah, let's just get a look at Cade Klubnik and see what he is for the last 4. That's really the only way that I see him getting in there unless Geno gets hurt, right? Like I think if they're, instead of 5-5 through 10 games or 5-7 through 12 or whatever it is, they're going to keep riding it out with Geno and not turn the page over to the youngster.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's you'd have to think Aaron Glenn wants to protect his job. Like, you can't possibly think he'd be secure if he had to bring Klubnik in and we just lost 8 in a row. Like, there's no way he could tell me he's confident that he's not, that he'll keep his job. I just can't imagine that he's not going to want to do everything in his power to set us up to be competitive. And I don't think, is he really going to put it all in the hands of a rookie? I mean, it could be different if we're already, really bad and it goes down to the last 4 or 5 games of the year and says, oh, well, let's see what we got. This kid looks great in practice. He had a good preseason, and the season's kind of like maybe, but I just think, I just don't think that Aaron Glenn has the luxury of going into the season with such an unknown as a backup to a 37-year-old quarterback.
Yeah, no, it is a big unknown, which I tend to agree with you. I think they'll eventually add another veteran when that comes. I don't know, right? Like, there's still a couple months before training camp kicks off, but Brady Cook and Bailey Zappi, they kind of just feel like preseason arms, not really true contenders for that backup quarterback spot.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that's on the quarterbacks. Let's go running back room. So obviously Breece Hall returns. You have Braylon Allen, Isaiah Davis, returner Kene and Wanu. We'll start with Breece Hall. Fresh off that new contract, what's the thought for 2026?
Well, a lot of it's going to depend on Geno. If you can't scare the defense with your quarterback, if you're incapable of having a functional passing game, it's going to be more of the same. They're going to stack the box, and it's going to be very hard because Breece Hall, different running backs are different styles, different types of players, different strengths, and Breece Hall is obviously, we've seen, incredibly dangerous with space. Like, all those big plays is when there's space. And he's not the type of runner where it's going to be successful when there's 8-9 guys stacking the box because they're not afraid of a run and he's running into walls. He's not going to power through. He doesn't do that, right? Most don't. But I think that Breece Hall, if Geno Smith plays well and functions, I think with all these weapons drawing attention and, an offensive coordinator who has a history of, having teams and coaching teams with good offensive lines and really good running games, I think there's an opportunity for Breece Hall to take another, to have a much better year than even last year. It's like, to actually rush on the ground for 1,300 yards. I think that's definitely open as a possibility, but I think he needs a functional quarterback for that to happen.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it last year, he went for just over 1,065 yards, 4 rushing touchdowns in 16 games, averaged 66 yards per game, 4.4 yards per attempt. I think, if he plays a full healthy 17 game season, I think you're probably looking at somewhere around 1,600 scrimmage yards. So maybe 11 to 1,200 rushing and then another 400 receiving, somewhere in that range. I think he'll be a very useful piece in this offense, right? Like Frank Reich really likes the screen game. I think it's something that they're going to get involved with a little bit more to this year than they did in previous years gone by. And I think with the additional weapons, and like you mentioned, hopefully the improved quarterback play, how many times over the last 4 years have the Jets not really had the weapons, especially when Garrett was out, and teams are just going to go, okay, we'll put 9 guys in the box. Good luck trying to run the ball. I don't think you could do that with Garrett Wilson and Omar Cooper and Sadiq and Mason Taylor and all these other guys.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. And I'm looking forward to talking about each player and what we could expect from them. And I will preemptively say that my response about Breece Hall, and it depends on Geno Smith, is going to apply to every offensive player on the team except the offensive line.
Now, how about the non-Breece Hall running backs? Braylon Allen was hurt last year. Isaiah Davis, role player over the last couple of years. What's your confidence level in Braylon coming back off the injury?
I'm pretty confident with today's medicine and the way things work today. I think he'll be okay. And the fact that he has such limited reps and there's so much limited expectation, and that we have Isaiah Davis, who has over 5 yards average per carry, small sample, but he's done his job in that role. When, overall, when Isaiah Davis comes into a game, he averages 5 yards a carry. It's hard to complain about that. It's hard to think, oh, we need to get a better backup running back than that. And I think that takes a lot of pressure off Braylon Allen. And, you can have a lot of control about how many reps he gets. You could even wait the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season and go primarily with Isaiah Davis if you don't feel 100% that Braylon Allen is ready.
Yeah, I think so too. To me, that's the I think the benefit of having a guy like Isaiah Davis who, has been productive in limited roles. I saw an article earlier this week that was talking about the idea that the Jets should trade one of Isaiah Davis or Braylon Allen. And I reacted to it, earlier, and I think it was over the weekend. But point being, I don't really want to give up on the Jets running back depth. I think, both guys are, cheap and controllable over the next 2 years. And I think provide solid depth behind Breece Hall. And it's not like they really need the cap space to do things, anywhere else. So I'm good with keeping those guys. I honestly think Isaiah Davis is a little bit more proven than Braylon Allen is so far. He, gets a lot of hype. And I feel like in the training camp in the preseason, we think like every year, this is going to be the year that he takes a step forward, but he really hasn't yet through 2 years. So I would just like to see a little bit more consistency from his game.
Mm-hmm. That's fair enough.
All right. So let's keep it rolling and get to the wide receiver room with Garrett Wilson, A.D. Mitchell, Omar Cooper, Tim Patrick, new addition, Arian Smith, Isaiah Williams. Starting at the top with Garrett, I think I know where you're gonna go with this. It depends on Geno, but where are you at with Garrett as the lead dog?
Well, Garrett's a little different because he managed until last year where he got hurt. He managed to get over 1,000 yards receiving regardless of how shitty the quarterback situation was for multiple years, right? With Zach Wilson and, for everything that was wrong, he always managed to do it. So, I mean, the big thing with Garrett is how is he going to come back from the injury? I think that he didn't have, if we were competitors last year, he wouldn't have been out the rest of the season. He would have played, and he was kept out for a reason, for his own protection, as for his future, which is going to be good for him now, because now he comes in and he didn't further injure himself. Like, I think I'm confident that Garrett Wilson will be healthy, and I'm expecting more of the same. I'm expecting a real fidgety, great wide receiver that gets open, that runs great routes, that makes amazing catches if you put the ball anywhere near him. And he just, again, waiting to be on an offense that allows him to be Garrett Wilson and do his thing and be the weapon we know he is.
Now, I think Geno, even with the flaws in his game, he's still someone who's not afraid to take shots down the field. So I think if he plays 17 games, Garrett does. I think we know he's going to go over 1,000. He did it the first 3 years in the league. But I think we might see a little bit more yardage. This might be the year where he gets the 1,200 number that's been so elusive. He was at 1,103, 1,042 in 2023, 1,100 in 2024, and then 395 through 7 games in 2025. I think this is a year where we see both the yardage and the touchdowns go up for him as the true number one target in this offense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that, and I'm always excited for what he could do in the perfect type of situation. And he might end up having this magical chemistry with Geno Smith and have like a really tremendous year. It's very possible. We all know he's super capable of it. We know he's capable of putting up really big numbers. We just need everything to come together. And if we're hard to stop in the run game, and we're controlling the line of scrimmage and, forcing them to put, again, it's a game of chess, right? If they have to put more people in the box to stop the run because we're running on them, then Geno could open it up and hit Garrett Wilson. Then Garrett Wilson will be poised to make a lot of big plays and have a great year. I think it also depends a lot on Omar Cooper. Like, if Cooper comes in and makes a dramatic impact, right away, and he's like a really lethal type weapon that causes problems for the other team, that's going to help open things up for Garrett as well.
That's what I was going to ask is, do you think Omar Cooper ends up being wide receiver 2, or who's wide receiver 2 on this team?
I think Omar Cooper has every chance to win the job. Will he? We got to see how it translates to the NFL, but it would be disappointing if he didn't win the job based on, where we got him and the fact that we had him valued. A lot of people had him as a top 20 pick. So it would be, we would hope that he's able to win the job. It doesn't mean it's not a disaster. Oh my God, he was a wasted pick, automatic bust if he doesn't. There are players that, need to develop. A.D. Mitchell could give him a run for his money. I'd worry about, like, if A.D. Mitchell is not WR3 behind Cooper, then I think he's gone. He's done. Like, if he can't establish himself as the solid WR3, that's not going to be a good look. When, your competition is, I know he's a veteran, but a guy who had like 15 receptions last year, that wouldn't be a good look for A.D. Mitchell. He better be the WR3 behind Cooper.
I would. That's my feel on it as well. I think it wouldn't surprise me if maybe earlier on in the year they lean more on A.D. Mitchell than they do Omar Cooper, and then that kind of he passes him as the year goes on, just because we've seen them take it slow with rookies in the past. And I know I'm skipping ahead a little bit. I have a hard time outside of Garrett predicting what these pass catchers are going to end up with, because I feel like A.D. Mitchell, Omar Cooper, Breece Hall in the receiving game, and Kenyon Sadiq probably all somewhere between 400 to 700 receiving yards, but I just don't know what the pecking order of targets are going to end up being there.
Yeah, and I'm not going to be so locked in on the statistical numbers like catches and receiving yards if it's because it's being spread out really well. Like, if we're really effective and we're moving the ball really well, and Cooper's making great plays and Sadiq is making great plays, no one's dropping passes or doing, they're all doing what they're expected to be doing. They're all running good routes. And Breece Hall's when we need him and we call plays to him, or when, as a check down is doing his job. If everybody's doing their job It's not always about statistics. We could look at it and see very clearly, oh, they just have a lot of weapons and everyone's contributing, and that's the best scenario. So, we're not going to be blown away by looking at individual statistics, right? Because personally, what would you rather have? Garrett Wilson have 1,500 yards, 10 touchdowns, or would you rather have and then some of the players not play so well and not really do anything or make much of an impact? Or would you rather have nobody has blow away statistical numbers, but everyone's contributing and playing really well?
Yeah, and make the offense a little bit more diverse and not as one-dimensional.
The most important statistic, how many points are we scoring a game? Right? Let's look at that. If we're scoring 26 points, I'm not saying we're going to, J-Boy, so don't lose your mind, because I know you're about to like freak out and like shoot me, shoot a howitzer towards Sacramento. But I'm saying a hypothetical. If we were to score 26 points a game, this is my hypothetical. Do we care about the statistics of the players?
No.
Like, do we care if there's one guy that has crazy numbers, or is it better as a football team and not to rely on one guy? Like, that guy gets hurt and your offense is screwed. Like, wouldn't you rather have an offense where you're scoring 26 points a game, for example, and everybody's playing well and it's well distributed?
Right, because that would mean you'd have a top 10 offense, which is something we haven't seen the Jets do in God knows how many years.
Which is why 26 points a game is completely hypothetical.
Yeah, right. I think I'd sign up for 20 points a game. That would be an improvement over where they've been over the last few years. All right, keeping it rolling with the tight end room. Kenyon Sadiq, Mason Taylor, Jeremy Ruckert as the top three. I really like this room a lot. I think this is one of their stronger rooms when you consider the top end talent with what Sadiq can be, on top of already what Mason Taylor showed in year one, and Jeremy Ruckert more as your blocking or depth option at tight end 3. And I said this after the draft, like, just because they drafted Sadiq, I don't think it means they're out on Mason Taylor. I just think this is a team that's going to plan to utilize multiple tight end sets a lot, and I think both get used here.
Yeah, I don't think I didn't take it at all to mean that they're out on Mason Taylor. As a matter of fact, they were the opposite when they talked about him before the draft. They expect a big year from him. I think that they see Sadiq I think they see Mason Taylor as a tight end, like an inline safety valve, check down, sometimes sneaks out for a pass, tight end. And I think they see Sadiq as a weapon, a guy that might be in line sometimes, but as very often, the way McBride is used, the way Bowers is used, I think they see him as a slot, guy to put in the slot, to be a very difficult to cover and match up against weapon.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of laying it out. Like you stated, or like I said before, Taylor's going to be involved. It's just not as the lead tight end anymore. But with Sadiq, you can line him up in the slot, out wide, in the backfield, in line, send him up the seam. There's a lot of creative ways to get him involved in the offense. You could throw him screens. He's good with the ball in his hands. And I like how you laid it out with Mason. I think he's kind of more of that traditional. He's going to block, but slip out sometimes and catch some passes. And, maybe combined, the two of them are around 1,000 yards, like 600 to 700 for Kenyon Sadiq, and 300 to 400 for Mason Taylor is kind of where I'm at. And that kind of, again, puts them in that crop with the next tier of Cooper and A.D. Mitchell and Breece Hall in the receiving game. I think, again, just looking at to kind of close out the weapons conversation in the passing game, obviously a lot of attention is going to go to Garrett Wilson. But then beyond that, it's just, all right, here's your depth. I don't know if you're going to have another 1,000-yard receiver like in 2015 where they had Eric Decker and Brandon Marshall, but you might have a bunch of guys who are contributing. And like you said, to me, I think that leads to a more balanced offensive attack.
Yeah, I think that's what you might have, right? And that's fine. And it's really hard. It would make us a more dangerous team against the defenses we play up against when you don't know what we're going to be week to week. Like, we might come in and have weeks where Breece Hall is going to be 150 yards and 2 touchdowns and 80 yards, 70 yards receiving, and just be a machine, and then totally turn around the next week and suddenly it's a Sadiq week where he gets 8-9 receptions and 140 yards, or who knows, but just could beat you different ways, right? Meaning if you're going to focus on one thing, we could beat you in a different way. We could focus on something else. If you say we're going to stop Garrett Wilson and take him out of this game, okay, we'll beat you with Breece Hall and Omar Cooper. Or we're going to take Breece Hall out of this game. It's like, okay, well, how are you going to take him out of the game? Well, if you're going to do that, we're going to eat you alive, with all of our weapons, with our receiving weapons. I mean, that's the hope, right? That's the hope. That's the idea. That theoretically, that's what you want to do. I mean, we haven't done that in years, right? We say that every year of what you want to do. There's a difference between what you want to do and what you theoretically would imagine working versus what we've been able to do. Obviously, we have not been able to do it. But whatever year the Jets decide to turn this around, whatever the year the New York Jets come up and are competitive and good and win a bunch of games and give us hope, whether it's this year or next year or 10 years, whatever year it is, it's going to be a surprise. It's going to be lots of people, because lots of people are going to be very down and negative on this team until they actually come out and do it, right? But that doesn't stop you and me for every year figuring out and saying our belief of how we can do it. Like, if this is the year we're going to do it, what does that look like? And how would it happen? And I think that's what we're doing. And I think people get confused because they think we're coming out here and saying this is what's going to happen. And we're not. We're just saying what we hope happens and how we can envision it happening.
Absolutely. Last positional group on the offensive side of the ball. We'll group it together. The offensive line from left tackle to right tackle: Olu, Dylan Parham, Josh Myers, Joe Tippmann, Armand Membu. For me, I feel really good about three of those starters at left tackle, right guard, and right tackle. I think Parham can be an okay, stopgap for you, similar to what Simpson was the last couple of years. And I think my biggest concern, I think this is a above average unit overall, but if I had to pick a concern, it would be, can Josh Myers replicate what he did last year? Because that was one of his better seasons as a starting center.
Yeah, look, I think that the continuity with the offensive line is the key, as much as the individual players, right? The individual players, there's excitement there, but like the main thing is that continuity. It's about being really comfortable with the people around them and getting good play from the people around them. But I think that we have a lot of versatility in our line. So, so if he's not right, there are moves we could make to fix it. Like if this is the year he falls over the cliff or he's just not performing up to par, there's a lot we can do. Like maybe this kid, that we drafted who looks really good, who's really, out of Miami, Inez Cooper. Like, what if he comes to camp and he's lights out? What if he's amazing? What if they struck gold, which we see all the time with guards, right? Like you could pick him up in day 3 and you get a guy who just comes in and blows everybody away. You could easily move. There's a couple of guys, both of our guards could be moved to center or have played center. So there's a lot of things that can happen, but I'm excited about the offensive line. I am. One of the things we don't talk about is, however much you might like Membu, Membu as a rookie.
Right. And a 21-year-old rookie.
Right. That was a 21-year-old rookie. What could he look like this year? We've seen him take giant leaps. Right, so he could jump into the conversation of top 3 right tackle in the NFL. I mean, if you're lucky, if things go well, and on the most optimistic side of things.
Yeah, I think he's the one that I could see maybe getting second team All-Pro votes. Like, I think that'd be a really nice step for him. Fashanu, I think, is just solid starter. Tippmann, I don't know. There's a lot of competition at right guard, I feel like, for one of those spots. So I don't know about that, but I think Membu has the chance. He was already the best offensive lineman they had a year ago, but he has a chance to really climb up the rankings of one of the 5 best right tackles in the NFL, if he's not already close to being there already.
Yeah, I know I love Tippmann as a guard. He's really good. He's really strong. I don't care. If he's the best in the league, it doesn't matter. He's really, really good. I really like him. Next to Membu for the run game, it's an amazing combination. They just knock people around. And Fashanu, to me, still has to take a step forward. Mm-hmm. And it's fine, because it's not like I'm panicking because it is year 3, and year 3 is when you want to see the biggest step. This is the year. This is where you start to see who he is as a football player, usually, right? And he did miss a lot of time his first year, so he still really only played like a little over a season. But I for him to be worth the pick and for me to be more excited about him, I would love to see Fasciano take a step forward, and I really hope those first few weeks he performs and plays well. So I really love to see that with Fasciano. To really believe that we could have a top 10 offensive line in the NFL someday, whether it's this year or in the upcoming years, I really want to see Fasciano take a step forward. I think your left tackle, as a left tackle, he's going to have to be better and continue to develop and take a step forward for that reality to come into fruition of us being like a top offensive line.
It's a great point, and certainly something I hope that happens. We'll get to the defensive side in just a moment, but do want to mention the sponsor of the channel, Prize Picks. Here's a look at one of my future NFL plays for the season. We're talking stats for the Jets on offense. I have Geno Smith more than 2,600 passing yards, Garrett Wilson more than 999.5 receiving yards. And you have to throw in at least 2 teams. So I just looked around and I like this Matthew Stafford line. I thought it was low for a guy coming off an MVP season, more than 3,874.5 passing yards. So you can get in over at Prize Picks with code HMA, receive $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. You can follow me at Matt O'Leary NY over on Prize Picks, and Prize Picks is now available in New York State. Thank you for sponsoring. All right. Let's get back to the program here and the defensive side of the ball. Defensive line, we'll talk interior guys first with David Onyemata, Juwan Briggs, T'Vondre Sweat, Darrell Jackson, Harrison Phillips. Anyone from that group stand out that you want to hit on?
I just think it's a bunch. There's no superstars in that group. I just think it's a solid group. I think it's just a solid group of role players. And I think that if they're well coached and they all do their job, it could formulate it could be a strong room for the team. I do. I think Briggs is really good from the inside as a pass rusher. I think he's disruptive. I think Phillips is a good leader. He's a good guy, like good attitude, good, strong player, consistent. I think Sweat gives you that big body, that big run stuffing body. I like him in that role. I think that I really like the kid that we drafted, hopefully to be like that. If Sweat doesn't stick around in the future, maybe that's what this kid develops into. But it's another guy who could come in and just be a big, massive body to really stuff the run. And they're talking about him like they think he could cause disruption in the backfield. And hey, if that's going to happen, then great. When they drafted him, I was just hoping he's going to be a solid run stopper. But, if he's going to score some extra points by causing disruption in the backfield, then that's just, I'm sure we'll all be very happy with that.
Yeah, for me of this group, I think Juwan Briggs has the highest ceiling of these guys. I kind of want to see, was last year a fluke, or could he build off of that as a young player and potentially with a bigger role? Harrison Phillips, I think, is the leader of that group. I think just a solid guy you want in your locker room. And they lost Quinnen Williams, who obviously is a captain on this defense. I think Harrison Phillips is obviously captain material for this team, and glad that he's sticking around. And honestly, I said it during free agency, but I think David Onyemata was one of the more underrated additions the Jets made. Not that he's a star, not that he's fantastic, but just serves a purpose and is significantly better than a lot of the rotational guys the Jets were tossing out there last year. And I know the scheme is changing a little bit, going from Steve Wilkes to Aaron Glenn, but like some of the guys that they were rotating in towards the end of the year, like Eric Watts and Mozzie Smith and Tyler Barron and Kingsley Jonathan, like these guys aren't going to play. And the reason for that is because of some additions like Onyemata. So I just think, and another thing I said a lot, so I know I'm repeating myself, but really raising the floor of these units this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like a depth thing, right? It's not like in a superstar thing. It's in a depth thing. It's where a bust like Mozzie Smith doesn't get to be on the field and play anymore. Like we might not have all the stars we need to be a great competitive team yet, right? We're building it, and we're hoping these guys hit, we're drafting it, and we're building it. But it would be at least sometimes one of the ways to get better is to, not have a Michael Clemens on the field, but have somebody better, like to improve on those guys like that are on the field and hope that they don't have to be on the field. And I don't think we're done. I think Sherwood going to being the LB2 from the LB1, the lead guy to the Robin, from the Batman to the Robin, that's an improvement in the sense that he wasn't a good Batman, right? But maybe he'll be a better Robin. And if not, we'll get rid of him and we'll find another inside linebacker to replace him. And then of course, safety, I think we improve with Minka, but the fact that we still have Cisco still bothers me. So, but we'll talk about that later.
For the edge rushers, David Bailey, Kingsley Enagbare, Joseph Asai, Will McDonald. Let's start with the number 2 pick, David Bailey. What are your rookie expectations for him? I feel like I've seen a wide range. Start there, and then we can go through some of your thoughts on the other guys as well.
I saw a thing that said the prediction is the under over is 7.5, 7.5, which I think would be fine. He gets 8 sacks. I'm perfectly happy. And there's always some silly people out there that were saying only 8 sacks. He was the number 2. He's a rookie. You get a rookie edge to get 8 sacks. You're off to a good start in his career. The expectation is, year 2, get him to double digits. And then you hope that he makes the big step, that he becomes a superstar. That's the hope. Right? Year 3 would be the year after that, where you're hoping now he becomes a prominent player in the league. If it works out, it's a big if. Guys get drafted all the time. Not all guys become a Max Crosby, or not everybody hits. So we have to hope that he hits. So if he got 7 to 8 sacks, if he got 8 sacks, I'd be really, really glad and excited. That would be a really good thing. Obviously, if he came out and got 12 sacks and was an immediate superstar, that's the dream. But that can't be the expectation. That's not fair to have that expectation. How often does an edge come into the league and have double-digit sacks?
It's very rare. That's usually a position that takes them a couple years to really hit their stride. So I'm glad you brought that up. I think that's something we all have to keep in mind for his first season. And for me too, I think Osai has shown some pass rush juice, but is significantly better against the run than most of their edge rushers were last year. Will McDonald, I would like to see some more consistency from Will, because last year, what did he finish with? Maybe 7 or 8 sacks. It felt like they came in bunches, 3 in one game, quiet for 3 weeks, 2 in another game, like that. Can we see him be a little bit more consistent? And what would help, I think, is if they played with a couple leads and gotten some situations where they can get after the quarterback in the fourth quarter here.
Yeah, I mean, part of it, with Will McDonald, is going to be situational. Are we ever going to have a lead? Are we going to have the other team ever just dropping back in a passing situation for a quarter and a half to 2 quarters, because we have a lead and they're in shotgun. But the other thing that I'm hoping could help Will McDonald is just having other players that are better against the run. So it takes the focus of that off and he could just be the true specialist. Also standing up, right, in a 3-4, a different kind of alignment, just standing up and having Bailey on the opposite side of him. We just have to see how it looks. But it wouldn't be that shocking if Will McDonald broke out and had 10 to 12 sacks.
No.
I mean, that's not a shock at all. I like it the way you're saying it. I'd rather have it spread out and be more consistent with pass pressures and sacks spread out throughout the entire season than he has 2-3 sack games,
Yeah, no, without a doubt. Let's go to the linebackers. Jamie Sherwood, Demario Davis, Kiko Mauingoa, Marcelino McCurry-Ball. I'm really excited for the addition of Demario. I know, even at 37, I think he's still really good against the run. I worry about the depth of this room, though. What version of Jamie Sherwood are you getting? And if, God forbid, Demario has to miss any time, it gets ugly pretty quick.
It gets ugly pretty quick. I think one of the things that might help is that we might have a very high percentage of reps in a nickel, and dime. Like we might be playing one linebacker on the field a lot, just, sometimes two, maybe. I mean, it's a theory. So that we might have a lot of defensive backs on the field most of the time, or a high percentage of the time, which could help take the onus off of that position. I'm worried about it, obviously, short term for this season, right? Obviously, for this season, we're very, very thin. When your best linebacker is 37, and the second best linebacker was not an effective lead linebacker, or not as effective as we needed him to be. But I'm not concerned long term for the building of this team. Like, I think Demario Davis is a placeholder. I think they recognize, especially if you look at free agency and the draft this year, that it is not the hardest position to fill. Like, I don't think, especially for Moogs, who seems to do a really good job in finding these players and finding value players. So I'm not overly concerned as we develop as a football team that we're not going to be able to get and build up a good, strong linebacker room. But it is a concern for this upcoming season for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it, right? Like, obviously you couldn't fix everything in one off season, and I think Demario is a nice band-aid or bridge to it. And I think it's something they're probably going to have to address next off season and make a decision on Jamie, and depending on how this year goes. And they'll have a lot of money in free agency, and they'll obviously have a lot of draft capital. So, we'll see. But I don't think it's unfair to say that in the short term, outside of Demario, there's certainly question marks at that unit.
Oh yeah.
Corners, a lot of corners here to talk about. Nashawn Wright brought in from Chicago, AZ Thomas back for year 2. They drafted D'Angelo Pons in the second round, Brandon Stevens, Jarvis Brownlee. What stands out to you from this room, and what are you hoping to see?
I think that we have a lot of guys with upside, and we're going to see who the guys that step up are. Like, we have a lot of things to be hopeful for, right? So Pons is obviously very exciting draft pick. A lot of potential there. He was one of the best defensive player on one of the best defenses in the country. Chip on his shoulder, overplays his size, has played against elite competition, is a really great prospect. I love AC Thomas. I thought he made rookie mistakes, which were fine and forgivable for any cornerback that's just thrown into the league. I think there's a lot of upside and potential in him. I think Wright from Chicago had his best year, has some things he needs to work on and improve on, but also as a playmaker, some excitement there. I think that, and then Stevens is a placeholder, right? He's the veteran guy we brought in for 2 years where you know what you're getting. But I think there's a lot of potential for us to end up with 2 really good cornerbacks for a really long time. And that's, whether it's Pons and Smith, and maybe Wright is the CB3, like behind them, that backs them up, or comes in the nickel or dime packages or different packages. We're lacking the known star. Sauce Gardner's not here anymore. We don't have that known star, but similar to the defensive tackles, we have a lot of good players. The difference is these are very young players, where a couple of them could make up a really good cornerback room. But we will know. We're going to find out this year who they are, and we're going to know a lot about them by the end of the year.
Yeah, I think the guy I'm most excited for is the player they took in round 2, D'Angelo Pons. Does he end up playing the nickel? Does he end up playing as an outside corner? Very curious to see how he ends up being deployed. I think he'll have a chance to win a outside corner job, but I think he's going to be a fan favorite just regardless of where he plays. Brings a physicality level. He's an undersized player who plays with a chip on his shoulder. That always seems to play to the fan base. And, I was very vocal about wanting to see more of AC Thomas in year 2. And I hope that he gets an opportunity to get on the field, because I think there was, a lot of promising things in year 1. Just have to see it a little bit more to count on him as a starter going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think fan favorite is a no-brainer. Unless he stinks, unless he doesn't translate to the NFL, he's going to be a fan favorite. Everybody loves an underdog. Everybody loves a person who goes against the grain, right? When you have a guy who's 5'8", if he's making big plays for us and being, and making our defense better, he's going to be very, very, very well received by this fan base. No question about it. I'm sure we're all going to love him.
Let's close with the safety room. You obviously have Minka Fitzpatrick, who you traded for, Dean Belton, you signed in free agency, VJ Payne, 7th-round pick, Malachi Moore from last year, who was a 4th-rounder, and Andre Sisco brought back. Hard not to love the Minka Fitzpatrick addition. They traded only a 7th-round pick for him. They signed him to, in my opinion, a pretty team-friendly extension on top of that. I think his presence is going to mean a lot for this defense. One, for someone who could maybe create some turnovers, but on top of that, just the leadership too, Jeremy.
Yeah, no, I think Minka was a great pickup. He's going to be very important and critical, I think, potentially to this turnaround, to this rebuild. He might not be here for the longest term of it, but just 2 years of him as we hopefully transform into a real football team. He could be very valuable, a very good placeholder to lead that room, that safety room, that gives us time to address it and build it. But that safety room is a work in progress. It's just a room that has to be built. And I don't know. Maybe some of the guys that will be there in the long run are there already. Maybe not. Like in 2 years from now, it might be a completely different room with different names. At some point, we're going to have to invest some real capital in a young safety that's going to be able to lead that room for a long period of time.
I agree. That's another need, I think, going into next year, but Minka could be the placeholder in that. And just want to share a couple quick thoughts before we close on VJ Payne. I think he's going to be a Chris Bancho favorite. I think he has an immediate impact on special teams, but it wouldn't surprise me either if he ends up maybe not a starter, but like a solid third safety that's a rotational player. I see that path for him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, who knows? I mean, anything you get out of him is a victory. Anything you get any kind of contribution for him, it's a win.
Yeah, as a 7th-rounder, and that was some pretty good value. I know a lot of people who thought he would go 3 rounds higher than what he ended up. So hopefully he ends up being a nice little find for the New York Jets. But there you go. We just wanted to do a quick run through on our expectations and some stat predictions on the offensive side of the ball for this room. It's kind of a quiet time right now in the NFL season, but always fun to chat with you for an hour on the show, Jeremy.
Always, man. Favorite hour of the week.
All right, guys, that'll do it for us. Please make sure to like the stream before you go. Comment down below. Subscribe if you're new. I'm Matt. He's Jeremy. We'll catch you next time.